Drafting the top scoring running back in fantasy football increases your chances of winning exponentially. But how can we potentially identify who it will be before we even make our picks? Well, in this video, I'm going to break it all down. I'm going to go through the traits that make up almost every single RB1 we've seen over the last 8 years. I'm then going to go over the list of candidates who have the potential to be the RB1 this year. And then, of course, finally, I'm going to make my prediction for who I think it will be. If you can't wait to start drafting fantasy football teams, you don't have to. Underdog Fantasy has drafts going on all offseason with tons of unique and fun formats. Not to mention their flagship Best Ball Mania 5, where one lucky winner will become a millionaire. Plus, they already have pick'em lines ready for week 1 of the NFL season and their new streak format where you can win 1,000 times your entry. Just go to UnderdogFantasy.com and sign up using promo code ENDGAME to get a special pick'em that you can't get anywhere else, plus up to $250 in bonus cash. Now let's start with the ingredients that make up the top scoring running back in fantasy football. When you look at it over the last 8 years, you've got David Johnson, Todd Gurley, Christian McCaffrey again, Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, and then, Christian McCaffrey again. Obviously, these guys were all studs. Nobody came out of nowhere. These were all known stud running backs who happened to have one of or their best year ever on that particular season. So that right there helps us out. We want guys being drafted very early in fantasy drafts that we already know are studs with that kind of potential. The second thing here is all these guys either had massive touchdown seasons, we're talking like 19, 20 plus touchdowns, or they had massive pass catching seasons, either a ton of receptions, a ton of receiving yards, or both, or in some cases, they had both massive touchdown seasons and massive receiving seasons. So if we're going to look at the number one running back, it's not just about the touchdowns. We also have to look at the receiving. Raheem Mostert, a great example last year, 21 touchdowns, not the number one running back. Why? Because he didn't have that receiving work. So when looking for the overall RB1, we want guys that have huge touchdown potential with the ability to catch a ton of passes. So as I go through the list of candidates here, I'm going to only be looking at the running backs being drafted in the first 2 rounds on the major fantasy sites, ESPN, Yahoo, and Sleeper, because again, this is where the RB1 almost always comes from. We don't see some guy come out of nowhere and finishes the RB1. So let's jump right into it. And of course, the number 1 pick on all sites this year is Christian McCaffrey. Not a lot to say here. Christian McCaffrey, the 3-time RB1, touchdown upside check, receiving upside check. Really just comes down to, can this guy stay healthy? If he does, has a great chance to be the RB1. Nothing more to say here. Let's just move on. And then at number 2 on most sites is Breece Hall. This guy's in a great situation this year. Has an improved offensive line. The Jets really went out, beefed up that offensive line. Aaron Rodgers hopefully will stay healthy all year, which means an improved offense, which means improved touchdown upside. And he led all running backs in receptions last year, so we know he can get it done in the passing game as well. I think Breece Hall checks all the boxes here. Touchdown upside in this offense if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, definitely. Plus receiving upside, definitely. So Breece Hall certainly has to be on our list of candidates for the overall RB1. As does Bijan Robinson, another running back that will be in a much improved offense this year. No more evil Arthur Smith. Kirk Cousins at quarterback. You got to think this Falcons offense is going to give him many more chances to score. So certainly has 20 touchdown potential. And of course, already one of the best pass-catching running backs in the entire NFL. This guy has incredible hands, making one-handed, behind-the-back catches. He can truly do it all. So Bijan Robinson certainly has to be among the contenders for the overall RB1. And then we get to an interesting one, and that is Jahmyr Gibbs. So if we just look at Jahmyr Gibbs, yes, I think he checks all the boxes you need. Last year had 11 touchdowns. Could certainly see that number go up this year if he gets a bigger piece of the pie in this Lions offense. Lions have one of, if not the best offensive lines in football. And of course, we know the pass catching is there. This guy could truly be the next kind of Alvin Kamara type running back that we saw be the RB1 at one point in his career. Now, of course, the issue right now at the time of this filming is the hamstring. He's got a hamstring injury. We don't know how serious it is. They're not really telling us anything. But look, if he's out there week 1 and he's good to go, he certainly has the potential to be the overall RB1. And even if he's not, remember, Achane was not even active week 1 last year. Even if he misses a week, it's still okay. So I'm putting Jahmyr Gibbs in the list of contenders to be this year's number 1 scoring running back. Next on the list is Jonathan Taylor, who actually was the RB1 just a few years ago. Now, does he have the touchdown upside to be the RB1? Absolutely. I think Jonathan Taylor could reach that 20 touchdown mark in this Colts offense. Shane Steichen is an offensive genius. He's going to be the workhorse running back. Plenty of chances to score here. The worry is, of course, the pass catching. Even that year he was the RB1, only 40 catches, which is his career high. The only reason he was the RB1 that year was it was a pretty down year for running backs. He arguably had one of the worst RB1 seasons we've seen in probably a decade or more, to be honest. So Jonathan Taylor, I'm not sure he checks the box in the receiving game to be the overall RB1 this year. I like Jonathan Taylor a lot. I think he's got top 5, maybe even top 3 upside. Top 1 feels like a stretch. I'm going to scratch him off the contenders of overall RB1. Next up is Saquon Barkley moving to the Eagles. So let's look at Saquon. Does he have touchdown upside in this offense to be the RB1? Probably not, sadly, because we know Jalen Hurts and that tush push is going to vulture so many touchdowns. Could Saquon Barkley reach double-digit touchdowns? Sure. Could he maybe push for 15? Maybe, but 20 seems like a stretch. And also, I do worry about his involvement in the receiving game as well. You look at it last year, the Eagles targeted running backs at the 12th lowest rate. Jalen Hurts is a guy that likes to keep the play alive, likes to keep his eyes down the field. Saquon Barkley maybe will get more catches because he is very good at that, but I'm not sure he has the receiving upside either to be the overall RB1. So again, I like Saquon. I think he could have a top 5, top 10 finish this year. Probably not number 1 finish. So once again, I'm going to scratch off Saquon Barkley. Next is Kyren Williams, who maybe could have been the RB1 last year if he stayed healthy all year. Let's start with the touchdown upside. Yeah, definite check here. 15 touchdowns in only 12 games last year. A monster touchdown pace. My worry here is the pass catching. Even though it feels like he was a pass catcher and he was used in the passing game, he only averaged 2.7 receptions per game last year. Also, he had 3 games where he didn't catch a single pass, and he had 4 more games where he had 2 or fewer catches. So I don't know if he has the receiving upside that we're looking for the overall RB1. I still really like Kyren Williams this year. I think Kyren Williams is going to be great. Again, top 5 potential, but I can't put him on the list of contenders for number 1. And then there's the King Henry, now with the Ravens. Look, touchdown upside, absolute check here. We've seen Derrick Henry have massive touchdown upside years, but you know what we've never seen from Derrick Henry? An RB1 finish. That's because of the pass catching. That's always the issue here with Derrick Henry. He's not going to come anywhere close to enough receptions, especially in this Ravens offense, to be the overall RB1. So again, I like Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry will be great, but I don't think Derrick Henry can push for the overall RB1. Do you want to win your fantasy league but don't have time to do all the research? Are you tired of drafting mediocre teams and then having to constantly hope you hit it big on the waiver wire just to compete? Do you wish you could have a fantasy expert like Pierre or myself with you while you draft? Well, now you can. With our app Draft Lane and our live draft pilot, we will guide you through every pick of your draft and tell you exactly which players we would pick if we were on the clock. Our proprietary algorithm will take into account your league settings, scoring, and roster requirements to identify the best picks every time you are on the clock to ensure you have a winning team from week 1. It's the closest thing you can get to having us there drafting with you. Get the biggest edge in fantasy football. Just go to your app store and search for Draft Lane and download it today and get ready to dominate your draft. And then a guy I've been talking up all offseason, and that is Isiah Pacheco. Let's look at the touchdown upside. Yeah, I think he has the potential for 20 touchdowns in this offense. You look at it last year, the Chiefs, surprisingly, scored the 15th fewest touchdowns in the league, and he still had 9 touchdowns in this offense. I think this is going to be one of, if not the highest scoring offenses in the league, even if Hollywood Brown misses some weeks early in the season. So many weapons on this offense now, and Pacheco is clearly the lead back. Now we get to the pass catching, and this is where it gets tricky. He did have 44 catches last year. Not great, but pretty good. If he could get 50, 60, then sure. Definite shot for the RB1 here. But remember, Jerick McKinnon, he's vacating 25 receptions from a year ago. And when asked about this, Andy Reid specifically mentioned Isiah Pacheco being able to fill that role. If he could get 15 to 20 of those catches that McKinnon left on the table, now we're talking 60 to 70 receptions, certainly RB1 potential. So I may be slightly biased here, but I'm going to put him in the list of contenders. Next up is Travis Etienne, a very good running back, but I do have my worries here. So let's look at touchdown upside, maybe. He scored 12 touchdowns last year, so sure, he could score more this year, but when you look at it, he was only 15th in red zone touches last year and 18th in touches inside the 5-yard line. Now look, maybe that was just the Jaguars offense struggling, but you got to bet on the Jaguars offense giving him many, many more opportunities to score here. Pass catching, I certainly think he can do that. He's a great pass catcher. Well, I shouldn't say that. He was number 6 in drops last year. I think he's maybe a slightly overrated pass catcher, but he's a good enough pass catcher to get you 60 plus catches, which is what you're looking for. So really, it's going to come down to, can this offense support a running back with close to 20 touchdowns? I have my doubts. I'm going to scratch him off. And then finally, we've got Achane. Certainly the touchdown upside is there for Achane. 11 touchdowns in 11 games last year, and the Dolphins ranked number 1 in total touchdowns and rushing touchdowns last year. So certainly, even with Raheem Mostert, he could get to 20 touchdowns this season. Passing work is where I have my reservations. Only averaged 2.5 receptions last year. Sure, he could see a bump in that, but we know the Dolphins, when they throw the ball, they're looking at Tyreek, they're looking at Waddle. So I do worry about that receiving total. But look, this is a guy who has legit potential to go close to 20 touchdowns, close to 2,000 total yards, 50 plus receptions. If he does that, yeah, that'll make him an RB1. So I'm going to throw him in the list of contenders. So our list of contenders are Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Isiah Pacheco, and Achane. Now it's time for me to pick who I think it's going to be this year, and I'm going to go with Breece Hall. I'm going to put Breece Hall slightly ahead of Bijan Robinson. My heart wants to say Bijan, but I think Breece Hall's situation is slightly better because I have no worry about anybody taking significant work away from Breece Hall. And I talked about it here. Should be a much better offense, much better offensive line, much better situation. And he's got that pass catching with Aaron Rodgers. So Breece Hall is my pick to be the overall RB1 in 2024. Will it happen? We'll see. But honestly, you can't really go wrong with any of these guys as your RB1 in fantasy. But if you want to see the only running backs we are drafting in the middle rounds of fantasy drafts, well, you can find out who they are in this video right here.